Right. Live on Facebook and recording with Bob Tassone. Good morning,
Hey,
Bob. Great to see you again. And it's great to be able to offer more information here today about Port Financial and Port Insurance. And I'm so glad that you are able to offer some wonderful insights on how to manage and today talk about risk. I mean, a lot of our conversations are about risk and how life and insurance go together. Today, though, I love the concept that we can dive into a little bit more, which is really why insurance is part of our lives. There is nothing that we do on a given day that doesn't involve some kind of risk, right?
that's right. Everything has risk.
And I love what you said here a few minutes ago as we were getting ready for this. You know, the ultimate risk of life is that at some point it's going to come to an end.
Yeah.
You know, but
you can't beat risk.
You can't beat risk
sooner or later.
But life exists daily. You know, I've heard people say you only live once. Well, actually, that's not true. You live every day.
Oh yeah.
You only die once.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Perfectly said.
You know, but obviously we want to minimize certain risks, and you know, you can't have life without risk. And you know, there's 1,000 decisions that get made thousands. If you think about the number of decisions that we make individually every day, every decision that we make is a choice between usually one or more factors, and they all have some kind of risk. I don't think that there's any way to say that any decision doesn't come with risk. Probably the most risky thing that anybody does on a given day, activity-wise, is get in your automobile and drive somewhere.
Yeah.
You know,
well, if you're talking about the risk of being injured or being killed or being, you know, that's the biggest risk you have is your car. Yes.
But certainly in a home, the things that happen in a household, there's all kinds of systems that a home has. Every system is designed to work, you know, in its efficiency and at its maximum capacity when it's brand new. And over time, these systems wear out, and then just living day to day in a home has certain risks. So I want you to let me kind of let you take over a little bit, talk about risk from your perspective. But I feel like there's a lot of great things we can talk about here on this subject matter.
All right. Well, anyway, life is risky. We accept that life is risky. And, you know, when you think about risk, most of the time people think about it in terms of going out in their car or their risk tolerance in relating to their finances.
Right.
I mean, those are two common
decisions,
things that we think about with risk. And insurance has to do with both of those things, but so does real estate. In other words,
yep,
real estate ties into risk all the time. And like you were saying, you know, there's a risk in doing something. There's a risk in driving your car. But on the other hand, there's a risk in staying home because an airplane could crash into your house. I mean, everything has a risk. The reason that insurance is possible and affordable is because most of these risks are unlikely. Very unlikely that an airplane is going to fly into my house, but it could happen. I would have been better off if I'd gotten in my car and driven than if I sat there. And we did have that happen over here. There's a helicopter that crashed over there off of Richmond Road into a development about 4 or 5 years ago. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was a helicopter that crashed into one of the developments over there by the ballpark, by the William and Mary ballpark, right in that neighborhood. And it took out like 5 or 6 townhomes that were in there.
Wow.
So yes, there's a risk by just sitting and doing nothing. Will Rogers says that even if you're on the right track, If all you do is sit there, sooner or later, you're going to get run over.
Doing nothing is not without risk.
That's right.
That's a great example.
So anyway, love my Will Rogers. Okay, so what do we do with risk? The first thing that people do with risk is they accept it.
Right.
Like you said, getting in the car, driving across town. I accept that that is risky, but the risk is not so great that I'm not going to go somewhere. I accept the risk.
There's a balancing act. Yeah, there's a balancing act that has to happen with any risk that we take. The risk of getting in your car is outweighed by the benefit of
going somewhere,
being able to have that activity, going somewhere and traveling and so forth. Yeah.
And since I accept that there is a risk that I could get into an accident, I have automobile insurance. And so some of the risk of going across town, I transfer to an insurance policy. But I don't transfer all of it because I have a deductible. Okay. So the deductible is part of the risk that I accept. If I am in a car accident and my car is damaged, I have a $1,000 deductible on collision. I accept $1,000 of it. But after that, I want the insurance company to take care of it. So that's what you can do with risk, is you can transfer it, you can accept it. And you can jump in here and talk about, well, how does that relate to real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. The choices that we make, of course, is what my examples were. And excuse me, there is a risk, for instance, of making a decision today that we're not going to do something with our home because it needs a repair. The risk of not doing certain maintenance because it's costly is that it could become more costly in the future and potentially dangerous under certain circumstances. The other risk is when it comes to not making a decision about real estate, because right now we're facing a situation where there's a lot of people that would choose to move because their circumstances would be far greater benefited if they were to relocate, sell their home and move to another home. But the decision to not do that is pretty high right now because there's a concern about higher interest rates and the financial barrier to doing that. Now, there's certain financial barriers that you're not going to overcome, and that's understandable for sure. But there is a little bit of a risk in staying in a home that just doesn't work for an individual. And we see it all the time. We have some folks that we do a downsizing program here with Memory Group, where we work with some of the local assisted living facilities. Yeah. And our objective in this downsizing program is to help people understand that downsizing isn't a decision that you just come up with overnight and say, oh, I'm going to downsize and move into an assisted living facility. That's not necessarily the only move that you make. But when you have a little bit too much on your plate, maybe you've got more home that you're trying to maintain than you can really keep up with, or it's just become a burden to keep up a larger home. Maybe the yard is too big, there's too many rooms, there's too much square footage, and maybe the kids have gone off and we don't need 4 or 5 bedrooms in a house. We really just need 2 and maybe another room for an office or something like that. So that large home just doesn't work anymore, and it's just too much to keep up. Often there's something that's involved with illness or the well-being of one of the individuals that owns that home. So maintaining or staying in that home isn't without risk, because at some point it becomes too much, and then it becomes even greater financial burden than preparing to make a transition. Certainly, we're not going to talk somebody into selling a home that they aren't ready to do that with, but our objective is to help people get ready so that they can minimize that risk of taking on too much and perhaps get themselves into a better living situation where they can be ultimately happier. Because isn't our objective in life to make sure, or to provide or to ensure that we have a higher level of happiness. And we all want to be happy. You can't make anybody happy.
I'm very happy to hear that.
It is good to make sure that avoiding risk is not necessarily the key to happiness.
Well, and doing nothing is not necessarily the key to avoiding risk.
Correct.
In other words, you might say, well, I'm safer because I stayed in my house or because I didn't sell my house and buy a new one. But let's talk about the risk of inflation. Everybody knows about inflation. We hear about it all the time. So I would really like to sell my house and move into another house. But that other house, because of where it is and the demand that's on it, is going to be more and more expensive.
There's a risk of waiting. That's
a risk of waiting, and especially if you're renting. If you're renting, you're renting, then what is the risk of renting?
There's a cost, an added cost, a cumulative cost. That risk can be added in, basically measured, and some of these risks can be measured in financial terms. Absolutely. I mean,
if you're renting and you rent for 2 years, at the end of 2 years, what do you have?
Yeah, you have nothing.
Checks.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. I mean, there are advantages to renting. Don't get me wrong here. There are advantages. There are times when renting is better than buying. And a lot of that has got to do with how long you're going to be in a particular property, because as with risk, purchasing a home does come with certain costs. You got closing costs on your mortgage. The lender's going to have fees. There's, transfer taxes and transfer fees and so forth and so on. So buying a home is not without costs, but when you measure the gain that you get by basically owning that home, there's 3 reasons that people buy a home. The first reason somebody buys a home is that they have a dream. We all have dreams. We want to be fulfilled. The second is control. We want to be able to have control over our environment. And the third is that circumstances and life changes. So those 3 things are the main reasons people buy a home. And often it's the same reason people will sell a home, is because their dreams change. They need to have control of their environment in a better way to keep their life happy. And then the circumstances have just completely changed. So it's our needs, evolve into other areas of life. I love this line of conversation, Bob. I think that there's a lot of things that we can talk about where the financial advantages to making sure that you are taking care of your risks, managing them correctly, making smart choices, avoiding costly mistakes. That's why we're here. You have wonderful tools and resources with Port Financial and Port Insurance services to ensure that people have everything that they need to make those choices with minimal risk or minimal risk of loss. And then here in real estate, I can help people make smart choices so that they're ensuring their happiness as much as possible.
Well, the key to it from my standpoint is understanding the risks and feeling like you're comfortable with how you're controlling the risks, whether you're accepting them, whether you're transferring them, whether you're controlling them, whether you're avoiding them. There's lots of things you can do at risk, but do you really have a risk management plan?
Good stuff.
So that has to do with insurance planning, but also risk management has to do with where are you living, and what are the risks in staying and doing nothing versus doing something. Absolutely.
Well, I know you're a busy man, Bob, and I've got actually a number of things I got to get done today. So I've got to wrap up, and we will have more conversations about this subject matter in coming weeks. And I appreciate your sharing your wisdom and insight on subject matters like this. Your contact information is right here on this page. Listen, if you're out there listening, you want to know more about insurance and Port Financial and the things that they can do, or you have questions about real estate, make sure that you like this, comment on this page. And reach out. We're here to help. There's no cost. There's no obligation. We're here to provide a service, and we want you to feel like you are really getting as much information as we can possibly share that helps you make smart choices and smart decisions out there. Bob, on that note, we will talk again soon. Look forward to chatting again next week.
Great to see you, John. Take care. Have a great week.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.